So I end up hiring him as my coach. He coached a few other athletes. He told me that I had to slow down to speed up, and I just didn't understand that. So I'm like, you're telling me that I have to run slower, I have to bike slower, and I'm going to be faster than you. I just don't understand how that works. So it took about 4 to 5 weeks of me not listening to his heart rate zones. And he calls me and he goes, I'm going to fire you.
This is the Home of Healthspan podcast, where we profile health and wellness role models, sharing their stories and the tools, practices, and routines they use to live a lively life. Eric, it is great to be here with you. I followed you for a while. Your journey has been a complete inspiration to me, and I'm just excited to share your story with our listeners. So thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
I was thinking maybe a good place to start would be a recent post you had where a coach almost fired you for going too hard. And because I think it's counterintuitive to a lot of people. For those who may not have seen the post, can you share a little bit about that and kind of the impact that had on you?
Yeah, I mean, it was counterintuitive to me. That's why I almost got fired. So when I first started triathlon, I was coming from a CrossFit type training background. I had hired a personal trainer in my late 20s to help me get back into aesthetically good looking shape. And he had me doing CrossFit workouts before CrossFit was really a thing back in like 2009, 2010. So essentially I was doing complex lifts with my heart rate elevated. I was doing, squats, thrusters, deadlifts, and then rowing in between sets or running around this indoor track in between sets. And they were 30-minute workouts at 6 a.m., 5 days a week. And I was going really hard. So, through him, I thought that to get fitter, you just went harder. You lifted heavier. You got your heart rate higher. So I fall into this world of triathlon, and I had a running background. Biking came really naturally to me. Swimming took a bit to pick up the skill behind it. But, when I'm into something, I go all in for good and for bad. So I went all in on triathlon, and I started doing these Wednesday night triathlons in Jamesville, New York, small suburban town of Syracuse, New York. And after a year of doing them, I started winning these Wednesday night triathlons. And, they were a sprint distance. So it was kind of an all out effort for about an hour. And that was within my domain of fitness because I was used to these 30-minute efforts of just spike my heart rate for 30 minutes and, see if I can go faster each time. But then when I would do it like an Olympic distance triathlon or like a half Ironman, this guy, Mike Corona, who would beat me, he would beat me in these longer distance triathlons, and I would beat him in the shorter ones. So, and I looked way fitter than him at the time. Right. I had abs and I had muscles because I was lifting weights, and most triathletes, they're kind of scrawny. They're running, biking, and swimming all the time. They're not doing a lot of weight training, and I was doing a lot of weight training. So I end up hiring him as my coach. He coached a few other athletes, and he told me that I had to slow down to speed up, and I just didn't understand that. So I'm like, you're telling me that I have to run slower, I have to bike slower, and I'm going to be faster than you. I just don't understand how that works. So it took about 4 to 5 weeks of me not listening to his heart rate zones. And he calls me and he goes, I'm going to fire you. And I'm like, why, dude? I'm like hitting all the workouts. He's like, you're not hitting the workouts. You are going way beyond the heart rate zones that I have prescribed. And you're not going to beat me if you keep doing that. So I'm going to fire you. Like, if you're not going to follow the program, then why are you paying me for my knowledge? So I'm like, all right, I'll follow it, but I just can't fathom why going slower would work. So I start following it. And sure enough, over like a 3-month period, when it was time to, go and race or, do like even a shorter distance 5K, all of a sudden I was faster. And at the time prior to hiring him, I was only running like 4 to 6 miles, and I was doing everything at like a 160 plus heart rate. So pretty high intensity. He told me that he wanted me between 130 and 140 heart rate for all of my running. So that backed my pace down from like a high 6 6 minute per mile pace to like an 8:30 or 8:40 pace at a 135 heart rate.
Yeah.
So, but by doing that, I was able to do more volume. I was able to run further. I was able to run more consistently. I was able to bike longer. I was able to bike more frequently because I was fresher. I wasn't pounding myself into the ground day in and day out. So over a 3-month period, all of a sudden, like I'm a little faster in a race, and then a 6-month period, like I start seeing my pace go down at that same heart rate of 135. So fast forward 4 years from 2010 to 2014. In 2014, I could run in the 620 minute per mile pace at a 129 heart rate for 20 plus miles. My body just became so durable. My heart became so efficient. My cardiovascular system so efficient at pumping blood that I just became fitter, and it worked. So, this works for endurance. If you want to be a fast 400 runner, then you're going to have to do a lot of speed work and strength work. But if you want to be a really good endurance runner, you got to slow down to speed up, because by slowing down, you're going to become more efficient at processing oxygen. Your heart is going to become more efficient, and you're going to build massive muscular endurance and muscular durability, which, ultimately is what a lot of these races are limited by, is like how, it's just kind of becomes a death march. And it's like, all right, is your body going to keep moving after biking 112 miles and you have to run a marathon? That has nothing to do with how much you can lift or how fast you can run a 400 or how high you can get your heart rate or how fast you can do the Fran CrossFit workout. It has everything to do with muscular endurance, durability, your body's ability to process oxygen, and how efficient your heart is.
It's one of those things that, following the science, I know and I get, and I still have, coming from a distance swimming background where it was just all basically gray zone yardage, like day in, day out. It's still really hard for me to get myself to do it. Now, I did a couple of rucks today to really try to lock in on that zone too. But for people to really understand, we spend way too much time in, I think you called it that gray zone, right? Like that 160 versus the super high intensity of like, hey, you're going zone 5, really, really pushing it in burst, or you're building that really solid base to build that muscular endurance. So yeah, that's fantastic, kind of to set a baseline where it took your triathlon and your 5X Ironman journey. Can you say a little bit about where you are now, right? So you started more CrossFit, got way more into triathlons, and then now, if people who follow you see, this far more ripped in your 40s, much bigger size, more on the CrossFit now than that endurance Ironman side. So can you talk a little bit about what led to that change and what today looks like for you on the fitness front?
For sure. So, I became addicted to the endurance side of things because I was good at it. And I was also comfortable. I was really comfortable riding for 3, 4, 5 hours. I was really comfortable running for 1, 2, 2.5 hours. I got to a place where I was no longer comfortable with super high intensity and super low duration and super low reps and sets. So when I made the transition from Ironman kind of back into the CrossFit world, it took me another year to figure out, like, I got to back way off on the endurance stuff. I need to back off on all of the reps and sets. Like I can't do 5 hours of volume a day like I was doing with triathlon. And like, you have to recover long enough in between sets so that you can back up that effort. And you have to go a lot shorter in these conditioning pieces if you want to increase your anaerobic capacity, because, all of a sudden the 150 to 160 is a gray zone again. Like, you got to be doing stuff at like 170 or even 180. You got to be going max heart rate, but only for like 30 seconds, 1 minute, not long duration. And then, you're recovering enough to be able to back that effort up again so that you can increase your anaerobic capacity and you can increase your lactate threshold. And then with the reps and sets with lifting, like that's kind of like triathlon, where you're not maxing out every single day. Every day, you're doing a percentage of your 1 rep max. You're kind of periodizing it until you get to a place where you're testing that 1 rep max, and then you're doing a deload week, and then you're, periodized training again. So it took me a good 1 to 2 years to get back to a place where I'm going hard enough in the efforts with conditioning that I was was resting enough in between sets, that I was lifting heavy enough to get stronger. And then I honestly had to back way off on running to get to where I am now. And that happened over the last 2 to 2.5 years, where, I only run about once a week now. And that was really the secret sauce that I was missing in order to get stronger. I was still running too much. I was doing too much endurance stuff to gain the strength I needed to be a competitive CrossFit athlete. So yeah, now my mix of training is, I'm very focused on CrossFit. I'm trying to get to the CrossFit Games in my age group. So I'm in the gym 5 to 6 days per week doing CrossFit type training. And then 5 to 6 days per week, I'm doing some kind of aerobic conditioning, but it's generally mountain biking in the mountains. And very rarely is it over 90 minutes. It's usually 60 to 90 minutes of aerobic exercise, so that it's not massively affecting my ability to lift heavy and do the anaerobic conditioning that CrossFit requires.
And that mountain biking, do you try to keep it in that zone 2 range when you're doing it?
I do. I keep it in the zone 2 range, but there are some intervals within it. The terrain kind of dictates your effort. So, if you're climbing something that is super steep, it may push me a little out of zone 2. But I really use the CrossFit training for the anaerobic conditioning and the mountain biking for the aerobic conditioning. And, I have years of bike volume under my belt. So, even the steepest of climbs, I can generally stay in that zone 2 gear when I'm out there doing it.
And do you have any, you just said gear in terms of gears on a bike, but do you have any gear that are your go-tos on the fitness side? Like, what is the bike you use?
Yeah, I got a really fancy bike. I have a Specialized S-Works Epic, which is the top of the line cross-country race bike that they have. And then as far as like CrossFit gear, right now I'm wearing Rad Global shoes that I just got. I really like them. 10,000 is an apparel brand that I'm an investor in and have worked with since day one. Some of the tools that are kind of a game changer are grips for CrossFit, wristbands for CrossFit, especially when you're in hotter climates. The wristbands just help keep the sweat from getting onto your hands and getting onto your grips so that you can still hold the barbell. Chalk, obviously, is a no-brainer, like bringing chalk with me everywhere I go to make sure I have good grip on the barbell and good grip on any of the pull-up bars or ropes or rings that I'm using. With triathlon, I have a bike computer that I've used for years, a Garmin bike computer. I have an Apple Watch that I use to just kind of loosely monitor everything. I have a pretty good understanding of my body, having done this for years, of that. I know around what heart rate I'm in at all times. I still really watch it on the bike just to see if I'm within that 130 to 140 heart rate zone, but I kind of know that I am. And CrossFit, I know how hard I can go on most workouts. I know what I can do unbroken before I have to rest. I've done it long enough to kind of know what my body is capable of and what my mind is capable of. And, I try to push a little bit harder, every couple months on whatever kind of period I'm in within the CrossFit training.
For those, those listening that probably aren't as attuned, which I think is 99% of humanity, just aren't as good at listening to those signals. Would you say, what's the right signal for them? If they're doing something and the form starts to give, that's basically failure. Failure is not once you get hurt, right? You can push through it with bad form, but if you're using poor form, you're not doing the right thing anyway. Is that kind of the recommendation you would give them?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So I got injured a ton when I first started into CrossFit because it was my fault. I was trying to, do too much weight. I didn't have the proper foundation. I didn't have the mobility. I didn't have I hadn't strengthened my smaller tendons, ligaments, and stability muscles enough to support the heavy weight. And I was doing it, with my heart rate elevated. So my form was being compromised. And I was banged up from 2016 to 2018 all the time. I was always working around something. It was frustrating. And it wasn't until I really focused on building a solid foundation. So just like backing off on CrossFit and just like squatting a lot at a lower percentage, front squats, back squats, lunges, deadlifting, RDLs, strict overhead presses, bench press, and then lots of accessory work, bodybuilder type stuff of like bent over reverse flies and shoulder raises and slat raises and using crossover symmetry and use it for pull-ups, doing a lot with high volume pull-ups with bands. Again, just you're always fighting what is holding you back in CrossFit. Like something is always lagging. So, if you can get everything in unison or really close to unison, that's when you're going to be firing on all cylinders, and you're going to avoid injury if you can get everything kind of strengthened to the same degree. So that's what I did is I backed off a lot on all of the CrossFit Metcons. I was still doing conditioning, but it was low skill conditioning, assault bike intervals, row intervals, ski erg intervals, burpees, burpee box jump overs. I wasn't snatching with a high heart rate. I wasn't snatching heavy with a high heart rate. I wasn't, clean and jerk, deadlift, any of back squat. I wasn't doing any of that stuff at a high heart rate. So after backing off, doing that stuff for a couple years, building the foundation, building the mobility, building the movement patterns, then I was able to start layering the Metcons back in. And, the last 3-4 years, the only time I really have gotten hurt these last few years have been from crashing my mountain bike.
Okay. Yeah, I saw some of those. You mentioned a piece of equipment, the assault bike, and the post that we actually started this with, you're on the assault treadmill, which I absolutely love those. Do you have any go-to home equipment when you're not able to get to the box or get out on your mountain bike? Any stuff at home that you like to keep around?
Yeah. If anyone can see the video version of this is Muscle Mountain. So I have the assault bike, I have the rower, I have the ski erg, I have a GHD machine, I have a full rig, sauna, shower, ice barrel, barbells, plates, sandbags. The things I use most here, the assault runner, the things I use most here though would be the ski erg, the assault bike, the rig, and sandbags. Typically here at home, I'm doing like longer EMOMs, every minute on the minute type workouts. So a typical workout that I would do at the house would be a 40-minute EMOM. So every minute on the minute for 40 minutes. I would do like 15 calories skiing, cardio movement. And then I would do like 8 to 10 sandbag cleans with 100-pound sandbag strength movement, but also cardiovascular. And then I would do like 15 calories on the assault bike, and then probably a skill. So like 6 to 8 bar muscle ups on minute 4, just cycling through that. So basically 10 rounds of those movements. That's a typical workout that I would do at the house. But yeah, the equipment that I would recommend is some kind of cardio piece of equipment. I think the bike and the ski erg are my two favorites that I use the most. The sandbag, just because I love doing like sandbag cleans, sandbag squats. If you can fit in some kind of rack so that you can do back squats, bench press, overhead presses, and then a barbell and plates. Those pieces of equipment, you're going to do a lot of good stuff with it.
And on the EMOM, just because I'm not familiar, are you try to get it in 30 seconds so you have 30 seconds rest? That's kind of the sweet spot for somebody.
The goal is, I could do each of those hard and I could get them done in 30, but I'd have a tough time getting my heart rate down to be able to go on to the next station. So I am targeting about 40 seconds for each of those movements.
Okay.
What I can do at, I'm probably at 80 to 85% of my max heart rate once I get to minute 20. So the first 20 minutes should feel pretty manageable. And then when you get to 20, you should be like, maybe I didn't program this right. Am I going to be able to hang on? And the last like 8 minutes, you should barely be able to hang on. 40 seconds of work and 20 seconds of rest. So whatever you can get done at about 85% of your max heart rate within 40 seconds, that's how you should tailor it to your fitness level.
And you do it for 40 minutes. Would other people need to start like 20, 30 and kind of build up, or?
Yeah, I started these I think 28 minutes was where I started, and I've built to 60 minutes. Ultimately you can tailor the intensity so you can make it longer. The goal of it is muscular endurance. So, if you're making it shorter, then I would go at a higher intensity. The longer is really working muscular endurance. And if you're going to go less than say 12 minutes, then I would recommend something like burpee box jump overs or assault bike sprints, where you're just going at a very high output for 30 seconds and then resting for at least 30 seconds before doing it again. Because, 12 minutes, you're not going to get a ton of muscular endurance work out of doing that. You're just not going to have gotten in enough reps for the muscular endurance.
One thing you've touched on a few times is the recovery period between sets. But if we can just kind of expand that more on rest and recovery in general, and sleep and the importance of sleep. I know one of your rules is getting at least 7 hours of sleep a night. I mean, how do you think about rest and recovery, especially at this stage in your life where it's probably different than when we were in our teens or in our 20s, some of the stuff that we need there?
Yeah, so I'm 43, and in 2017, when I moved to Denver, I joined a facility called Denver Sports Recovery, and they had an infrared sauna and a hot tub and a cold plunge, and I started going there every single night. And by doing that, after about a year period, all of my aches and pains from the Ironman years slowly went away. So I've stuck with that routine. I do that every single night, where I'm in my sauna at the house for 20 minutes at around 200 degrees. And then I get in my ice barrel, which is generally in the mid 40s, for 3 to 5 minutes. And I do 3 rounds of that every single night religiously from like 5 until 6:30. We also have people that come over during that time period. So I combine that with community time and meeting other people and interacting with other people. So I consider it multitasking without multitasking. My sauna use dates back to like 2012. So I've been doing sauna for 12 years on a regular basis. It's huge, not only for the physical recovery, but, we all are busy and we all rack up, stress and anxiety over time. And for me, it's just kind of like a mental and emotional reset when I do that every single night. If I had a bad day, all of a sudden I feel good again after doing that routine. So, I would say I do it almost more now for the mental and emotional benefits and the mood boost than I do for the physical benefits. But that is why I do it. It's because I get so many benefits during that 90 minutes just by doing, one thing.
Yeah. And one of the things I've seen you share some on is the light therapy stuff on recovery and injury repair. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah. So the light and laser therapy, again, probably 10 years. I've used the beds where, you can lay in a red light therapy bed. And then we have our own red light therapy panels here. And then in the last 2 years, I've been using a device called a Kinian Move Plus, which you can put on certain areas and it's right on your skin. And that device I really like. All of it is increasing blood flow to the areas where you have the red light therapy. So for me, my lower back is generally a pain point. So I'll use that device on my lower back. When I hurt my shoulder mountain biking, I was using it every single day on my shoulder to help bring blood flow to my shoulder to help it recover faster. So yeah, big fan of light and laser therapy, big fan of Normatec. I mean, there's a million different tools. I'm a big fan of just moving throughout the day, having standing desks, walking. I'm only sitting if generally I'm in a sauna or I'm on my bike. Otherwise I'm usually at a standing desk. We have no power here today, so I'm outside sitting in a rocking chair. But generally I would be at my standing desk, just in an upright position throughout the day. And then obviously eating a single ingredient diet, animal-based things that you can find in nature, vegetables, plants. That's going to help you tremendously with inflammation if you're not eating an inflammatory diet. So I'm cognizant of how I fuel myself throughout the day. And then obviously supplements are icing on the cake, making sure that you're taking the right supplements. For me, a lot of that is based on blood work, just doing my blood work and seeing where I'm deficient, or, if my cortisol's high, what can I do to help balance my cortisol? If my testosterone has, reduced some, what can I do to improve my testosterone levels? I feel like everyone always wants to know, what supplements are you taking? And again, I really feel like supplements are just kind of the icing on the cake. If you don't have the exercise dialed in, if you don't have diet dialed in, if you don't have getting, 7, 8+ hours of sleep dialed in, like, focus on those things first before any kind of magical supplement fix. Even recovery, I would put above supplements.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to be magic pills, they're going to be fitness, nutrition, and sleep, right? Like those are the true magic pills, and everything else is the icing on the cake, as you said. So on the sleep, another benefit, I believe, of sauna and the cold plunge and that rotation is it's supposed to really help in getting into deep sleep and quality of sleep. Yep. Is it the Apple Watch? Do you track your sleep at all, or is it? Yeah.
I do. I mean, I kind of know. I go to bed around the same time every single night. I'm usually in bed by 8:30 or 9, sleeping by 9:30, 10. And then generally I wake up with no alarm around 6 a.m. So, I'm getting my 8 hours of sleep every night. I do have an Apple Watch that I can track it with to kind of see over time how it's being affected based on various lifestyle changes or based on a sleep supplement that I might be trying at the time. I like doing that sauna routine in the evenings. Yeah, I generally end with a quick quick dip in the cold plunge, but I like going to bed with my body temperature elevated so that it's working hard to cool itself down, because that's part of the natural sleep process, is your body cooling so that you fall asleep. And then also I avoid highly stimulating environments late at night. Red Rocks Amphitheater is 8 minutes from our house. We can see the amphitheater from the house. And people always ask, like, oh, do you go to all the shows? And I'm like, I would if they were at like 3 p.m., but unfortunately they're at 8 p.m. And, the high stimuli environment, like, it keeps you up at night. So, that's another reason why I like doing the sauna cold dinner routine in the evening. And then, I'll watch some YouTube or listen to a podcast before bed. I just like winding down and just having my nervous system really relaxed when I'm preparing to go to sleep.
And you mentioned some supplements, and I think you've referenced in the past Beam Dream, maybe to help on sleep. Are there any other specific to sleep that you are kind of your go-tos or you've tested with and seen an impact?
Yeah, I love Beam Dream. I do like supplements where there's a behavior associated with them. So for me, Beam Dream helps me get to sleep. So that's helping with the number one recovery tool, sleep. So that's something I take every single day. Creatine, I've always noticed that when I'm taking creatine, I'm generally stronger and able to maintain muscle mass easier.
How much creatine do you take?
I generally do 3 to 5 grams pre-workout, 3 to 5 grams post-workout.
Okay.
So anywhere from 6 to 10 grams each day. I think 5 is obviously what is generally recommended. I also eat steak, so I have other sources where I am getting some creatine in. So creatine is another one that I'm always going to be taking. I mean, I have access to a lot, so my supplement stack is quite hefty, just because I have access to it. Other ones that I'm definitely traveling with. I just started working with a new company called NeuroGum. I really, really like their gum. It has natural caffeine, L-theanine, and B vitamins, and it's just kind of this nootropic feeling where you're really dropped in and really energized. So I'll do a half a piece. They recommend 2 pieces for their serving. I don't like to overdo it with caffeine because I also have a coffee every morning. So I'll do a half a piece of the gum pre-morning workout, and then as long as my afternoon workout isn't too late, if it's not past like 1 or 2 p.m., I'll do another half a piece before that afternoon workout. And I've really liked how I feel doing that. Thesis is another company that has really good nootropic products. They have various blends based on the state you want to be in, motivation, clarity, energy. Magnesium is another really good one that most Americans are deficient in. So I typically have magnesium before I go to bed. I supplement with additional magnesium beyond what's just in the Beam Dream. I like colostrum. I've taken colostrum for years. That's the first milk a mother produces for her offspring. It's coming from cows, so bovine colostrum from a company called Cowboy Colostrum. I generally do some type of cover all your bases type supplement, whether it's Athletic Greens or Beam Core. There's quite a few of them out there, but just something that is going to have, various vitamins and minerals in it. Blokes is my multivitamin. I have berberine, some ashwagandha, vitamin D, and this was based on my blood work of just like, what am I deficient in, or, what am I trying to combat from my blood labs?
On the blood work, do you just use a local physician, or do you use one of the services and kind of periodically have a cadence that you're checking that?
Yeah, Blokes just today actually came out with at-home testing. So you can just do it yourself. You can prick your finger, you mail it in, and a week later you get your results back. So that's pretty awesome. Prior to that, they would send a nurse to my house. She would draw blood, and then I would get the results back from them after they got the blood results back.
And how frequently do you do it? I mean, you are dialed in more than the average human, but how often would you check your blood work to dial that stuff in?
Yeah, I do mine every 6 months. I would recommend doing it, depending on your age. If you're in your 40s, probably once a year. If you're in your 30s, once a year I still think is good, but at least every other year doing it. In your 20s, every other year. But I do it every 6 months just to, I'm training at a pretty high level, and I want to make sure that I'm not tanking my testosterone and my cortisol isn't super high from overtraining. And at certain times of the year, like it's going to be, and when you're ramping up to get to the CrossFit Games, you're flirting with being at your peak fitness level and injury, and kind of the same with an Ironman. That 2 to 3 weeks prior, you're flirting with injury. You're going at a volume that isn't really sustainable. So yeah, I like to stay on top of like, what do the biomarkers look like? How do I feel? How am I sleeping? What is my mood like? Do I look forward to workouts, or am I dreading workouts? Am I looking forward to the day, or am I not looking forward to the day? I mean, I really feel like mood is one of those dictators of, you're overtrained, or like it's, ready. Let's go. It's go time. I feel good.
And on sleep, I mean, do you have a particular mattress you use, anything like that you seem like someone who puts a lot of thought into these things. I'm really curious.
I do. I put in lots of thought. So for sleep, we have a Performa Sleep mattress, which has this copper technology built into it that helps with cooling. We have a chili pad. I think they actually just got bought by a company called Sleep.me or Sleep Me, but one of these cooling devices so you can set the temperature of your bed. We have Attitude sheets that I really like, bamboo sheets that are super soft. I use a sleep mask by a company called Dream Recovery. I use earplugs that I just get on Amazon from Heroes, construction grade earplugs. Okay. I have a Dyson fan blowing on me lightly at night. Some nights I'll use Newcom, which is an app that you can download that'll put your brain into various brain waves that can trigger sleep. We set our temperature to 63 degrees at night, so it's super cold in the bedroom. Thank God my girlfriend allows that. We have Lagoon pillows, which are some of the best pillows I've used. I really like. Dream Recovery has these amazing silk pillowcases that we have on our pillows. But again, like going back to, what are the things that really make a difference? Avoiding highly stimulating environments late at night. Yeah. I know people are not going to want to hear this, but like going out to nightclubs, going out to bars, hosting parties, like all of these things are going to massively disrupt your ability to get to sleep. And, I'm fortunate that I love my 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I don't want to affect that. So, I wind down, 7:30, 8 p.m. every night to make sure that I'm sleeping. So rinse and repeat. I can get up and have another epic 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. the next day.
Yeah, we've built a really unnatural societal life, right? That we should be way more front loaded in our socializing, in our food consumption. Everything should be far more front loaded, and we've shifted it. And because of our circadian rhythm, it's caused all sorts of downstream effects. Now, you touched a lot on how you think of fueling your body when you're working like you do. It's incredibly important, and that principle of single ingredient food. People talk about animal based or plant based, whatever. Well, sugar is plant based. That doesn't make it good. But if you're going to the unprocessed single ingredient, that's your base, and then you can kind of supplement on top from there. What are your kind of core principles above and beyond? This is where I'm starting.
For me, protein is the number one macro that I'm looking to hit each day. Carbs would be number 2. Fat would be number 3. And I build my calories throughout the day. So I eat light during the day because I've noticed that if I eat too heavy, it affects my energy levels and my mental clarity. So, I eat just enough so that I'm not hangry throughout the day. And then I have a larger meal for dinner because I don't need to be on or super energized in the evening after that meal.
But you need those calories because you need to refuel.
But I need the calories, so I have to get it in somewhere. So, a typical day for me is in the morning, I'm generally just having coffee. Maybe I'll have a banana and some honey if it's going to be a 2-hour training session with heavy lifting and multiple conditioning sessions. Maybe I'll have some kind of bar. Like I really like Morton, which is just like fast carbs. And then after that morning workout, I will do either 4 or 5 eggs, chicken sausage, and rice, or fruit and honey, or I'll do some kind of big smoothie. And then after my mountain biking session in the afternoon, I'll do something very similar, either some more eggs, fruit, and honey, or I'll do a smoothie or a smoothie bowl. And then at night, I'll do about a pound of meat, generally red meat, 5 days a week. 2 nights out of the week, it would be chicken or fish. And then for carbs, I usually either do potatoes or rice. And then I'll have some kind of veggie, tomatoes, asparagus, broccoli, something generally that I'm either steaming or also putting on the smoker with the meat that I'm cooking. That works for me. I get in my 1 gram per pound of body weight by doing that in protein. And I feel good day in and day out. And I'm able to maintain maintain muscle mass, even with a pretty high level of cardio.
I'm imagining from what you're saying, that when you're doing the smoothie instead of eggs, you're adding a protein powder to that.
I am. Yeah, I'm doing human improvement protein powder generally, or some kind of animal-based protein powder. Another good one is a company called Noble out of Austin, Texas. I really like their product. So yeah, I will do protein powder. I'll use slate milk, which is 20 grams of protein in it. I'm generally getting 40 to 50 grams of protein in that smoothie. And then I'll add a banana. I'll add some frozen blueberries. I'll add some nut butter of some kind for some fat. That's it. Pretty simple.
Yeah. So one of the things you kind of touched on is when you're doing the sauna, when you're doing the cold plunge, it's part of socializing too, right? You know, I had for years when I would go to the gym, it was, I have this set time, my headphones are in, I'm locked into work. I'm just here to be efficient. Even if I saw people I knew, don't talk to them. And then in recent years, learned much more about the importance of that social connection and the need for those social interactions. And so deliberately put the headphones aside and engage in the conversations and make it more social. I know that was, again, one of the core principles you had posted is around trying to work out with other people that have shared values and doing that recovery with other people. How else do you kind of bake that in to your life, knowing how important that is, not just to you, but to all of us? We're social beings.
Yeah, I mean, we designed our house to be this community wellness oasis, and that was very intentional. Like, we wanted people to come to us, and we wanted to bond with people in ways where we could share our passions, and also through, discomfort. Sitting in a sauna at a really hot temperature, you form fast bonds with people. Sitting in cold water, doing Ironmans, doing hard workouts with people, like, there's this earned respect that you get, and you also get really vulnerable really quick in those scenarios. Your endorphins are racing and conversations go deep really quick. They're not surface level. So that's what I like so much about those activities and building community around those activities. If we weren't hosting, if we didn't have this place to be able to draw people into, joining a triathlon club, joining a run club, joining a pickleball club, joining a CrossFit gym, just joining these various clubs where you're going to have chance encounters with like-minded people that have shared passions, and, joining a gym that has a sauna in it so you can meet people in the sauna. I would recommend all of those things so that you're combining wellness with community.
You touched on it kind of facetiously early on about the multitasking without multitasking. And so, when we often think about multitasking, it's I'm doing email while I'm on the phone, or I'm in the Zoom meeting while I'm responding to something else. And that mentally we can't multitask. But to habit stack positive things of having a meal with friends, doing the fitness and movement with friends, doing the recovery with friends, that 100% we can multitask and tick multiple of those healthy boxes. And it's amazing the example and the role modeling you set of crafting a life that enables you to do that and kind of builds around doing exactly that. When you talked about the benefits of the sauna, of the cold plunge, of the things you do, you said actually, there's a lot of physical benefits, but maybe the most impactful for you is this mindset and what it does for your mindset. Are there any other things you do? It seems like you get up pretty early, you get outside, you get that natural sunlight, but what are the things that you deliberately do to try to invest in that mindset, managing the stress? Because you're putting your body under a lot of stress. And in some of these races, competitions, you're probably putting your mind under a lot of stress too. How do you counterbalance that at other times?
Yeah, I mean, so having that 60 to 90 minutes of mountain biking built into my day every day, I consider that my moving meditation. I might be doing it with other people, but I am in my own world. I'm riding my bike by myself. I'm not having conversations. I'm often listening to one song on repeat. It's a skill-based activity with risk associated with it. So you have to be completely in the moment. You have to be present. I'm doing it in nature with the sun beating down on me. So again, another one of these things where it's multitasking without multitasking. And I really think about everything in life in that way as how can I get the most bang for my buck if I'm spending time time doing something. Newcom is another one of those things that I've really enjoyed doing lately. If I'm feeling stressed out, or if I'm doing things that are really taxing on my nervous system, like I was in Kauai last month with Laird Hamilton doing the XPT training, which was underwater pool training, oxygen deprivation, which is not something I'm used to. I'm not used to holding my breath and being very uncomfortable holding my breath underwater. So my nervous system was super taxed from doing that. And, every single night I was doing this Newcom rescue mode for about 30 minutes just to like reset my nervous system and to get out of that fight or flight mode and get back to that rest and digest, calm sense of being. So I'll do that. Every other week I get a deep tissue massage. Again, that's another thing where it's equal parts physical, mental, and emotional. It's just 90 minutes where I'm not on my phone. People don't have access to me. No one's messaging me. And I can just kind of let my mind do what it wants, not what is, I'm not executing. So I like having various breaks either built into my week, my day, where my mind isn't just executing. It just is free to make something of all of the experiences I've had, the people I've met, the conversations I've had. Just allows it to marinate. And I feel like after those sessions, or even during those sessions, that's where I often get my best ideas. It's when I'm running along the ocean. It's when I'm biking in the mountains. It's when I'm getting that deep tissue massage. It's even that like 30-minute haircut where I'm not on my phone and there's no stimulus hitting me during that moment. I feel like I get great ideas when I'm getting my hair cut. So make sure that you're taking these little breaks throughout the day or, every week where you're really intentional about just resetting your nervous system and also just recharging your social battery.
On that, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, do you do any of the practices to try to stimulate the vagus nerve to help that? I've heard of ear massaging or humming or some of the eye control stuff. Are there any that you've played with?
I mean, the only two that I play with are hot, cold. Obviously, the cold water is definitely doing that when you're fully submerging. And then Newcom, is definitely doing that when I'm using that Newcom app. But I haven't done any of the other ones. Breathwork is something that I need to get better and more consistent about doing. Historically, I have not been great about implementing breathwork into my routine. I'll do it, if I'm at a wellness retreat or if I get invited to do breathwork with someone, I'll always do it. But it's not a part of my daily wellness routine. But I do think that, just using breath work, you can control your nervous system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Eric, I know you're probably anxious to see if your power is back on. I know you've been out for a while. You are an absolute just wealth of knowledge. And I can't thank you enough for everything you've shared, not just today on this podcast, but in social. You kind of live this open book life of here's the stuff I'm working on, here's the stuff I'm doing that we can all really learn from. Before we go, is there anything you want to share with our listeners where they can find you? Of course, we'll have it all in the show notes as well.
Sure. I mean, best place is Instagram, my website, erichinman.com. Email list is called The Movement Memo. You can get to it through the link in my bio in my Instagram. Lately, I've been sharing these various guides around healthy eating, supplements, endurance training. A lot of sleep is going to be the next guide coming out. Money is going to be a guide coming out really soon. How I look at monetizing lifestyle, monetizing passions, how I invest in early stage wellness companies. So if you join the email list, you can have access to all of those different guides that we're pumping out on a weekly basis now.
Amazing. Eric, this has been a lively conversation. Thank you so much. Is there anyone before we part that you think we should also be talking to, that we should have on the show that could share, really powerful message with our listeners?
Oh, wow. Lots. I have a good buddy in Boulder, Colorado, who would be a good person to chat with, Mike Idala.
Okay.
You can chat with him. He's training for the Leadman right now, which is all of the different Leadville races throughout the summer. He's also a mindset coach. He's a freak athlete and just an incredible human being. So he would be great. Okay,
Mike, I will, if it's okay, follow up with you to see if you can make that intro. Yeah, thank you so much. Eric, you are a role model in so many ways. I just can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Home of Healthspan podcast. And remember, you can always find the products, practices, and routines mentioned by today's guests, as well as many other Healthspan role models on alively.com. Enjoy a lively day.